I was halfway through the frozen foods aisle when I felt the lightest tap on my shoulder. At first, I thought it was nothing, maybe a stranger needing help to reach a box of waffles or someone about to ask me where the oat milk was. My life back then was full of small, ordinary moments like that, quiet, predictable, lonely in a way that I had grown used to. I turned, expecting a simple interruption, but instead I was met with a woman's polite smile. Her words were gentle, casual, even yet they lodged into me like a stone I couldn't cough out. "Your daughter is beautiful," she said. For a second I laughed softly, assuming she'd mistaken me for someone else. "I don't have a daughter," I replied, my voice light, but confused. Her smile faltered. She tilted her head, frowning slightly, and then glanced past me. "She's been following you since the park," the woman added. Her voice lowered. "I thought she was yours." My stomach turned. I didn't understand. But when I turned around, I saw her. A little girl, no more than 5, stood just a few feet behind me. Her tiny brown curls were tied back with a scrunchie, and she wore a faded purple sweatshirt with a unicorn across the chest. She clutched a stuffed bunny by its ear, its fur matted and worn like it had been her only constant in the world. And then she looked at me. "Can we go home now, Mommy?" The words froze me in place. The air in the grocery store shifted. The buzzing hum of the refrigerators and the clattering of carts felt miles away, muffled by the pounding of my heart. I didn't move, couldn't. She stepped closer and reached for my hand, as if it belonged to her, as if this was natural, as if she had been waiting for me all along. I shook my head, forcing myself to kneel to her level, my voice trembling though I tried to sound calm. "Sweetheart, I think you're mistaken. I'm not your mom." But she just looked at me steadily, her grip unyielding, her eyes wide with quiet certainty. She nodded as if she'd heard me but didn't believe a word I said. "Come on," she whispered. "We should go now." The woman who had spoken to me shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting between us. Other shoppers began to slow their carts, curious. I could feel their stares. My cheeks burned with the fear that I looked like someone stealing a child. I wanted to explain to prove that this wasn't what it looked like, but my throat was dry. "What's your name?" I asked her softly. She didn't answer. "Do you know where your mom or dad is?" Still nothing. Her silence was too calm, too patient. She seemed to be waiting for me to stop asking questions and just accept her truth. The woman who had spoken to me gave me an apologetic look. "I didn't mean to cause confusion," she said quickly. "No," I replied, forcing a weak smile. "You did the right thing." She nodded, retreating down another aisle, leaving me alone with the little girl who refused to let go of my hand. "You are my parent," the girl said, then her voice soft but steady, far too certain for her age. A chill spread through me. I wanted to pull away, to disentangle myself from the strange, unsettling grip of this child who had appeared from nowhere, but I couldn't. Something in her eyes rooted me in place. It wasn't fear, wasn't desperation. It was recognition. I should have walked straight to the front desk, then should have handed her over to security, let someone else, anyone else, take responsibility. But something deeper, something buried under years of loneliness and wounds I thought I had already grieved, stirred in me. Because the truth is, my life hadn't been simple or easy. My mom, Denise, had been recovering from hip surgery, and I had been her caregiver these past weeks. My father had left when I was 8. And since then, it had always been me, my mom, and my older sister Angela. Angela, who had been brilliant but reckless. Angela, who had spiraled into addiction and self-destruction. Angela, who had died 6 years ago of an overdose, I was both devastated and unsurprised by. I had lived with that hole, that unfinished grief for years. I had grown used to the ache of it. I had told myself that family for me was just my mother now, that kids weren't in my future, that I was fine being alone. But here in this grocery store on an ordinary Sunday, this little girl with wide eyes and steady hands looked at me and said, "Mommy," and I felt the floor tilt beneath me. The store manager led us into a cramped office at the front of the building, the kind of space meant for paperwork and awkward employee conversations, not the unraveling of someone's reality. A young security guard named Mitch hovered by the door, calm but alert, while the girl Eliza, she whispered eventually, her voice so faint, I almost thought I imagined it, sat right beside me, her small hand refusing to let go of mine. I explained everything in a low, measured tone, terrified that if I raised my voice, I'd shatter whatever fragile balance was keeping her so eerily calm. She says I'm her mom, I told them, but I've never seen her before. I swear to you, I don't know her. Mitch pulled up the security footage on the monitor. Frame by frame, there she was trailing behind me through the produce aisle, following me past the bread stand, keeping her distance, but never letting me out of sight. Always just a step behind. My blood went cold. She's been following you since you came in, Mitch confirmed quietly. Looks like since the park across the street. I pressed a hand to my chest, trying to steady my breathing. I hadn't even noticed her before the stranger tapped my shoulder. How could I not have noticed a child shadowing me? What kind of person doesn't see something like that? 10 minutes later, the police arrived. 2 officers, one male, one female. They asked me the same questions over and over. Did I know her? Had I seen her before? Did I have children of my own? Each time I shook my head, the words tumbling out sharper, more desperate. I live alone. I don't have kids. I've never seen her before. But every time I spoke, Eliza's hand tightened on mine. She never looked frightened, never cried. She only pressed closer, as if my insistence that I wasn't her mother was the real betrayal, as if the truth lived in her eyes and I was too stubborn to see it. When the female officer crouched down and asked her where she lived, Eliza didn't answer. When they asked for her parents' names, she looked only at me and said, "She's right here." The officers exchanged uneasy glances. They checked missing child reports, called dispatch, searched the system. Nothing. No alerts, no open cases, no Eliza. It was as if she didn't exist on paper at all. By the time a representative from Child Protective Services arrived, nearly 3 hours had passed. I was exhausted, my head pounding with the weight of unanswered questions. Eliza still hadn't let go of me. She curled against my side on the office bench, her bunny tucked under her chin, her breathing slow and even, as if she had finally found rest. The social worker, a kind woman named Jackie, knelt in front of her and said softly, "Sweetheart, I'm going to take you somewhere safe tonight, okay?" Eliza didn't even look at her. She turned instead, wrapped both of her small arms around me, and whispered into my shirt, "Please don't leave me again." Again! That single word tore through me like glass. My instinct was to argue, to beg Jackie to reconsider, to promise I would take her just for the night. But the rules were clear. Foster homes, paperwork, licensing. My heart screamed no, but the system was immovable. Except it wasn't. After hushed conversations between Jackie and the officers, they came back with an unusual option, a temporary kinship placement. If I agreed to immediate fingerprinting, background checks, interviews, they could approve me as an emergency caregiver until her situation was sorted. "Is there any chance you might actually be related to her?" Jackie asked. I almost laughed. Related? I'd never seen this child before in my life. But then I caught myself. Because the longer I looked at her, her eyes, her mouth, the way she hummed softly when she was tired, the more I felt a familiar pang in my chest. She looked like Angela. Angela, my sister. My complicated, brilliant, broken sister. The sister I had buried 6 years ago after her overdose. The sister who never mentioned having a child. It was impossible. And yet, staring at Eliza's face, I couldn't unsee it. So I signed the papers. I signed them with trembling hands, my mind caught between disbelief and something that felt dangerously close to hope. Later, as I buckled Eliza into the back seat of my car, her sleepy eyes found mine in the rearview mirror. "Do we live far?" she asked. I hesitated, my throat tight. Then I whispered, "No, sweetheart, not too far." And I drove us home. That night I barely slept. Eliza was curled up on my couch under a blanket that smelled faintly of lavender fabric softener, her stuffed bunny tucked securely beneath her chin. I sat in the armchair across from her, watching the slow rise and fall of her chest, my own body refusing to unclench. It should have felt like a quiet night, like any other Sunday evening after grocery shopping and errands, but instead my living room felt heavy, filled with questions I didn't dare ask out loud. Who was this little girl? Why did she call me mommy? Why did she look so much like my sister? I kept thinking of Angela, her laugh wild and contagious, her restless energy that could light up a room or burn it down in the same hour. The way she hummed softly to herself when she was nervous or tired. and the way she collapsed into herself during the last years, spiraling in and out of rehab, making promises she couldn't keep. The last time I saw her, she hugged me with a desperation I didn't understand. She wore oversized sunglasses, even though it was raining, her frame so thin I could feel her bones through her jacket. She whispered, "I'm sorry," over and over, like it was the only thing she had left to say. She never once mentioned a child. The next morning, after a night of shallow dozing, I made pancakes, though Eliza only picked at hers. She was quiet but steady, her eyes following me every time I left the room, as if terrified I might disappear. When I handed her a glass of orange juice, she hummed a soft, tuneless melody, and my throat closed. It was Angela's hum. I didn't have much time to dwell on it. A call came from Detective Carson, one of the officers from the grocery store. He asked if I could bring Eliza to the station. "There's something you need to see," he said. His tone was steady, but there was an undercurrent of weight in his words. At the station, they led us into a small windowless room. Eliza climbed into my lap as if she had done it 100 times before. Her tiny fingers traced the shape of my hand absently, as if memorizing it. Carson sat across from us, a thin manila folder in front of him. He opened it slowly, his voice carefully measured. "We ran a DNA sample from Eliza," he began. "We didn't expect much. No missing child reports matched her. But the system cross-referenced her profile against people already in the database. Usually it turns up nothing. This time it did." I felt my pulse quicken. "You're not her mother," he said gently, "but there's a strong partial match, enough to suggest a close biological relationship." The room tilted. Aunt Carson continued, "That's the most likely relationship. Half-sibling, aunt, close cousin, it points to you." For a moment I couldn't breathe. The words hit me like a tidal wave, pulling me under. Angela. Angela had a daughter, and I never knew. I stared at Eliza, who was still calmly tracing my fingers, humming softly. She looked up at me, her brown eyes patient, steady, almost knowing. Carson's voice softened further. "Her birth certificate doesn't appear in the system, but we found hospital notes tied to her social security records. Her mother's name was listed as Angela Whitmore." I pressed a trembling hand to my chest. Angela had used her real name, just her first and last. No mention of the father. It was like a snow globe had been shaken violently inside me, and all the tiny pieces of my life were swirling without pattern, without landing. I had grieved my sister for years. I had carried the guilt of not saving her, not pulling her out of the spiral. But never once did I imagine she left behind a child. "Where has she been all this time?" I whispered. Carson flipped another page in the file. "With a family in Eugene. Friends of your sister. It looks like they took her in informally. No legal adoption. The man passed away in a car accident last month, and the woman suffered a stroke soon after. Eliza slipped through the cracks. No guardianship paperwork. No relatives stepping forward. My eyes burned, so she ran." He nodded. "We believe she walked several miles from that part of town. She may have seen photos of you in the home. It's possible she recognized you." I looked down at her. Eliza had closed her eyes, her small hand still clutching mine. A child who should have been shattered, broken, lost. But instead, she had found me. Out of everyone in the world, she had walked into my life and called me Mommy. I couldn't decide if it was fate or punishment, maybe both. By the end of that day, I signed the papers to begin guardianship proceedings. My hands shook as I signed my name, the ink smudging slightly at the edges. There would be hearings, evaluations, court visits, a gauntlet of bureaucracy. But in that moment, the choice didn't feel like a choice at all. Because when I looked at her, when I heard her humming and saw my sister's shadow in her eyes, I knew she wasn't lost anymore. And neither was I. The weeks that followed were a blur of forms, interviews, and court visits. My quiet little life, once defined by client deadlines, grocery lists, and the dull rhythm of solitude, was suddenly filled with the noise of bureaucracy and the fragile, steady presence of a child who refused to let go of me. At first, it felt surreal. A judge's signature turned me from a stranger into Eliza's legal guardian, at least temporarily. I remember holding that crisp sheet of paper in my hands, the words clinical and cold, and glancing over at her. She didn't need the paperwork. She already believed I belonged to her. When I whispered, "We're family now," she just smiled and nodded as if she had always known. But belief didn't erase the challenges. Eliza came with scars I couldn't see at first. Some nights she woke up crying, her voice caught in a place too deep for words. Other times she clung to me in crowded spaces, her small body going rigid if I stepped even a few feet away. She hated when I left the room. Even walking into the kitchen felt like a betrayal. I wasn't prepared. I didn't have the right clothes, the right toys, the right anything. I didn't even own a nightlight until she moved in. My house had been built for one quiet, predictable, undisturbed. Now it echoed with the small sounds of her humming, the thud of her little feet against the floor, the scrape of crayons across paper. She covered my refrigerator with drawings of houses, suns, and stick figures, me, her, and our cat Penny. Always three of us. Always a family. And I tried. God, I tried. I cut the crusts off her grilled cheese. I let her pick the bedtime story even when it was the same one 4 nights in a row. I stood in the dentist's office holding her hand, whispering she was safe, that she was wanted, that she was loved. Over and over until my throat ached from the effort. My mother Denise had questions. Dozens of them. The day I told her everything, she sat in silence for a long time, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Then she said, "Angela never told me either. I would have helped if I'd known." Her voice carried no anger, only regret. Now she comes over often, more than she used to. She reads to Eliza in the evenings, her voice softened by age but still steady. She teaches her old songs from our childhood songs Angela and I once sang together in the back seat of the car. Sometimes when I watch them together, my mother and the granddaughter she never knew she had, I feel both healed and broken all at once. It's a reminder of all the years Angela spent drowning, all the secrets she carried silently until they consumed her. There are moments when I still want to scream at her memory. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you hide her? Why did you make me mourn you while your daughter was out there needing us both? But the anger always dissolves into something else. Grief, regret, love. I may never know why my sister kept Eliza a secret. Maybe she thought she was protecting her. Maybe shame silenced her. Maybe she convinced herself that Eliza was better off without us. Those are questions I'll never have the answers to. But I do know this grief didn't end with Angela's death. It simply changed shape. It became responsibility. It became a little girl who hummed like my sister, who clung to me like I was her anchor, who looked at me with eyes too knowing for her age and whispered the word that undid me, Mommy. It's been 6 months now. 6 months since that Sunday in the grocery store. 6 months since she found me. And in those months, I've learned that parenting isn't about having the perfect lifestyle or the right gear. It's about showing up every single day. Even when you're tired, even when you're scared, even when you're sure you're failing. Because one night while I poured milk into her cereal bowl, she looked at me and said, "Thanks, Mom." Not Mommy, not Lena, just Mom. The word slipped out of her so casually, like it had been waiting on her tongue all along. I almost dropped the spoon, but I didn't cry. I just smiled and said, "You're welcome, sweetheart." And in that moment I understood something I hadn't before. She wasn't just a lost child. She wasn't just my sister's secret. She was mine. Sometimes I catch myself remembering the woman I was before that day in the grocery store. A woman who lived in silence more often than not. A woman who convinced herself she didn't need anyone, that children weren't in her future. That family had narrowed to one aging mother and the dull ache of a sister's absence. I thought I was steady, even proud of my solitude. But I see now that I was surviving, not living. Eliza changed that. She came to me with invisible wounds. She still has them. On some nights I wake to her soft cries, her small frame trembling as she clutches her bunny to her chest. She won't tell me why she's crying, not yet. Maybe she doesn't have the words. But I sit beside her, stroke her hair, and whisper that she's safe, that she's wanted, that she's home. I say it until my voice breaks, until her breathing steadies again. I've learned to build routines around her. Pancakes on Saturday mornings, crayons scattered across the kitchen table, a nightlight glowing in the hallway. Little things that tell her she belongs. She laughs more now. She hums when she colors, just like Angela did, and sometimes I have to step away, because the sound splits me open with both grief and gratitude. I never told her about Angela. Not yet. She's too young to understand the tangled truth of who her mother was. But she knows she looks like me. One day she asked while doodling another house with 3 stick figures, "Did you always know I was yours?" I couldn't answer. My throat closed around the words, because no, I hadn't known. And yet, when she held my hand in that grocery store, when she whispered, "Mommy," with the weight of certainty in her voice, some buried part of me had recognized her. My mother. Her grandmother calls her my brave little bug. Watching them together sometimes feels like a miracle I don't deserve. Other times it crushes me, a reminder of all that was lost, of the years Angela spent fighting shadows alone. If she had told us, if she had trusted us, things might have been different. But I've stopped asking why. Some answers will never come. Instead, I hold on to the gift Angela left behind, the piece of her that survived when she could not. Eliza is thriving now. She's still cautious, still startles easily, but she runs through the yard with Penny chasing at her heels. She draws suns and flowers and writes her name in crooked letters. And when she slips her small hand into mine on our walks, I feel it purpose, steady and undeniable. A few weeks ago, I asked her if she remembered the day we met. She nodded, her curls bouncing, and said, "I followed you through the store." "Why me?" I asked quietly. She shrugged, her answer simple, devastating. "Because you looked like home." Those 4 words undid me. Every doubt I'd carried, every question of whether I was enough, whether I was just a placeholder until someone better came along, she erased them with that one truth. Because I looked like home. Now when I pour her cereal, when I tuck her into bed, when I hear her call me mom, I understand. Sometimes life gives you exactly what you need long before you know you're ready. Sometimes the people we're meant to love find us in the most unexpected ways. She was never a stranger, she was family, and she always will be. If you've listened this far, thank you. This wasn't a story I ever imagined sharing, but if it touched you, if it reminded you of someone you've lost, or someone you found, I'd love to hear from you. Leave me a comment. I read them all, and your words mean more than you know. And if this story moved you, please like the video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe for more true stories of love loss and the unexpected ways family finds us. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and remember, sometimes when you least expect it, someone looks at you and sees home.